Hey, good morning. I'm sure that most of you have heard of Isabel Vaughan Spruce, who was arrested by police outside an abortion centre which was closed in Birmingham recently for praying silently in her head. A woman in England arrested for thought crime, literally thought crime. If she hadn't have said that she might have been praying, then they probably wouldn't have arrested her. But they asked her, "Are you praying?" She says, "I might have been praying in my head," and they arrested her for praying in her head in England. I'm sorry to say this again, but the whole thing is just utterly completely ridiculous and tyrannical, and there's something that I don't think even George Orwell in 1984 would have envisaged the totalitarian state to do in the future. But it's even worse because today the organisation that is supporting her has put out some information saying that she's now been charged. And this is what she's been charged with: protesting and engaging in an act that is intimidating to service users, which is completely ridiculous because the centre was closed. So she couldn't have been intimidating any service users. And she wasn't protesting, she was just standing with her eyes closed, praying. How can that be intimidating? And yet the police have charged her with intimidating behaviour, engaging in an act that is intimidating to people who weren't even there. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is more ridiculous than the crimes made up by the Cheka in the Bolshevik Revolution and the years afterwards, where you had tyranny in the Bolshevik Soviet Union or other places. And this has happened in England. Look, this woman, Isabel Vaughan Spruce, needs all of our support, all of our everybody to speak about this, to protest, to the people in government. And some of them, I don't rate any of the 650 MPs in government, but some of them say that they are against the whole movement of wokery. And this is extreme. This is not wokery, this is tyranny. Oppressing people, arresting them, dragging them through the courts for praying on the street in England. That's tyranny and that's totalitarianism. Some of them have even said that they, disagree with it. Not many, mind you, not many have spoken out. I've only heard one or two MPs, even mention this. Most of them are completely silent. Now, that may be because they don't know about it, or it may just be because they're frightened to speak about it. But when are you going to speak about these things? If you're an MP, when are you going to speak up about what's happening in our country? Because this was enabled by a parliamentary act brought in by the fake Conservatives in 2014 that allowed local governments to impose what they call public space protection orders. And a number of these have been imposed around the countries outside abortion centres. This one where Isabel was arrested was in Birmingham. The first one was in Ealing in West London, and that was back in 2018. When that happened, I think it was 2018, might be 2017. When it happened, there was a motion in the London Assembly, and almost everybody supported the motion to set up this, what they call a buffer zone, where people would not be allowed to protest, would not be allowed to offer help to mothers, not be allowed to have vigils, not even allowed to pray outside these abortion centres. I was one of the only few, there were 3 out of 25. I was one of the 3 assembly members at that time that opposed the motion in the London Assembly to support Ealing Council to set up the first so-called buffer zone outside an abortion centre. I'll put a link to my speech in the comments section so you can see. So then now there's others. I think there's one in Richmond. There's one in Birmingham here as well, where people are not allowed to pray on the streets, and that's deemed a crime. It's now a crime to pray silently in some places on the street in the UK outside certain abortion centres. But worse than this, going through Parliament at the moment is something called the Public Order Bill. And Section 9 of the Public Order Bill, as amended, would set this notion of buffer zones around abortion centres, not in local bylaw, if you like, local councils do it at the moment. It would be national. So every abortion centre in England and Wales would automatically have a buffer zone around it, and anybody who is deemed to be protesting in any way, even like this, just praying silently in your head, could find themselves being arrested and charged under national criminal law. This is where the fake conservatives are taking the country and how they are eroding freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech in our nation. And none of the other parties in Parliament would do anything different. Labour, the Lib Dems, the Greens, the SNP, they would all support it. They would all do the same. They'd probably even do it worse and quicker. Who knows quicker? I mean, the fake conservatives, they're gone now. They're irredeemable. They're all irredeemable together, and they're all taking this country to hell in a handbasket, and they're eroding our freedoms, and then they're putting in place together these laws which are criminalising prayer. So you see, the fake conservatives have made this law in Parliament in 2014. Then Labour, the local Labour council in Birmingham, have implemented it locally. And then you've got them acting together to criminalise prayer. But yes, what they're going to do now is vote for this in Parliament again, if it goes through. So this new section in the Public Order Bill was introduced as an amendment by Labour MPs in the Commons. They voted for it, and MPs, on the overwhelming majority of MPs on both sides, voted to put this in the bill. I think it was 297 to 110 was the vote, the number of MPs. So nearly 3 times as many MPs voted for criminalising all protest, all vigils, all prayer, all help to mothers outside any centre in the UK. And now it's gone to the Lords. If it gets through the Lords, it'll go back to the Commons. They'll have their final vote on it in January, February sometime, and that will become national law. So this will be a case of a national criminal law rather than local PSPOs. But, you know, this new news that Isabel, this Christian woman who stands up for the right for unborn children to be able to live, the news that she's been charged with this ridiculous charge is absolutely awful and appalling, and we need to turn back from this, and we're not going to turn back from it with the parties in Parliament that you've got now. Heritage Party here that I run is the only party that will stop this from happening, that we are fully committed to freedom of speech, and specifically committed to ending PSPOs that criminalise prayer and giving help to mothers outside these centres, and also ultimately abolishing abortion itself, so that children are protected in this country in the way that they're not protected now. So please do come and join us in the Heritage Party and stand to be a candidate, both locally and nationally. We need you if this resonates with you and you want to do something about taking back our fundamental freedoms, including the freedom just to think, freedom of conscience, freedom of thought, freedom of speech. And also, if you want to protect children from all these things that are going on. Please join us, heritageparty.org. You can look us up. Please also, if you would, give me a thumbs up to this video and subscribe to my channel, because that helps me and this helps this channel as well. Okay, thank you for listening. Please do also support Isabel as well. I'll put a link to her campaign, if you like, well, the campaign group that's supporting her after these terrible things have been done to her by the police in the UK. Unbelievable, but there we go. Thanks for listening, everybody.